And joining me now is Democratic Senator Chris Coons of Delaware. Thank you so much for being here. I know you're not happy with the notion of Congress not doing its job, constitutional job, which is to fund the government by October 1st. But I'm guessing you're happy enough that the government didn't shut down. Take me behind the scenes, if you will, the last several hours into what happened in the United States Senate with the discussions about passing this bill to keep the government funded for 45 more days without additional aid to Ukraine.
Well, Dana, I'm relieved that we are not heading home tonight having to explain a shutdown of the U.S. government to our constituents, to our neighbors, to the men and women of our armed forces and of federal law enforcement, our own employees in the Senate who would have been forced to work without pay. I've lived through several previous shutdowns, as have you, and they are not as glamorous or exciting as some might imagine. They are, in fact, embarrassing and tedious. They weaken us on the world stage. They make our allies question whether we're reliable. They harm our economy, and they show dysfunction in our political system. It was unexpected that Speaker McCarthy would make such a quick about-face today, embrace support from across the aisle, and move a CR that keeps our government open for the next 45 days. In the last few hours, there were a lot of urgent conversations among senators, Republicans and Democrats, leadership, appropriators, and rank and file to reassure each other that there is sustained and strong support for funding Ukraine. There are other things that are also we're not taking care of in this bill. Humanitarian relief funding. I'm someone who chairs the relevant subcommittee and is very concerned about the dramatic growth in hunger around the world. There's other unmet needs. We are going to have to turn to those in the coming 45 days and work out before the end of this calendar year, how do we sustain funding for Ukraine through the rest of the coming year? How do we sustain our leadership in the world and invest in the State Department and in countering humanitarian challenges? And how do we finish our appropriations process? Today, we didn't shut down the government, but tomorrow we have to keep our commitment to sustain funding of Ukraine, something President Biden has spoken strongly about, something that both Leader Schumer and Leader McConnell, Chair Murray, Vice Chair Collins, Senator Graham and I have all spoken to this evening in different settings to reassure our partners and allies that we will sustain our support for Ukraine.
You know, the Ukraine issue is obviously one of the big ones right now, and Senator Michael Bennet of Colorado made public that he was very upset about moving quickly on this bill to continue funding the government without that additional Ukraine money. I guess my first question is, how did you overcome that? What assurances did he and others get that what you're talking about, the bipartisan support to back Ukraine financially and otherwise, will continue?
Well, I'll let Senator Bennet speak for himself. But as I said, there were a lot of conversations between senior senators to reassure each other that there is sustained support. I was literally just talking to a leader in the House Republican caucus about whether they might also move and send us an increased Ukraine supplemental. The core issue here was if the government shut down tonight, there wasn't going to be additional funding going to Ukraine in the next couple of weeks. And we have instead found a path forward where the government stays open, and there is a path forward for working together to support Ukraine aid and to send a strong message to the 50 other countries supporting Ukraine that we will be with them going forward.
You mentioned that you spoke with a senior Republican in the House about Ukraine funding. After the House passed its bill, there was a statement that came out from the House Democratic leaders, and in it, they said that when the House returns, they expect Speaker McCarthy to advance a bill to the House floor, an up or down vote that supports Ukraine. Right. Is that your understanding that that will happen? And as you answer that, just listening to what Speaker McCarthy was saying today, would Democrats be okay with additional money for border security along with that, U.S. border security along with that?
Well, I think that depends on how it's configured. President Biden requested in his supplemental request additional funding for our border. I think there is wide agreement here that we can and should invest more in finding ways to help the countries from which many are coming north to secure their borders and to invest in some of the systems and structures that secure our southern border. One thing was clear today, that shutting down our government and forcing the entire Border Patrol and the Customs and Border agents to work without pay wasn't going to help that situation. I do think that we have a significant opportunity here to work together to fully fund Ukraine's needs for the coming year and to find a path forward following the leadership of Chair Murray, who is speaking on the floor right now, to finish our appropriations process in the Senate.
One last question for you. You talk about the need for support for Ukraine by the United States. Talk about it when it comes to democracy, small d, so on and so forth. How important is it, particularly given where we are right now, for the president, for your predecessor in your Senate seat, to be more forceful on the question of Ukraine, explaining to the American people why it is in America's interest to give this additional money that he's asking for?
I think this is an obligation that falls on all of us in elected leadership. President Biden has a uniquely forceful and capable voice here, given his 5 decades of experience in foreign policy. I'll remind you, he went to Kyiv earlier this year, the first U.S. president in modern history to go to a war zone that the United States did not have control over, and to go to the risk of being in Kyiv, standing alongside President Zelensky and committing to all the support that Ukraine needs. And just last week, as you know, President Zelensky came and addressed the entire Senate here in the old Senate chamber and heard very forceful statements of support from all the senior senators. What you're raising, Dana, is the larger challenge. We have to convey to the average American that 50 other countries are supporting Ukraine and have matched and exceeded our support for Ukraine, that whether or not Ukraine succeeds in its war against the Russian invaders and occupiers is critical to the future of NATO, of the free West, of democracy. And if Ukraine falls, other countries will take strong signals from that they can change borders by force, that they can realign the world. We heard a chilling prediction from one of the most senior military leaders when we had a conversation about Ukraine last week, who said, if we do not stand by Ukraine, it will, within a matter of a year or two, be open season on the world stage for aggression that will draw the United States into future wars. We are far better off robustly and sustainably supporting Ukraine in their fight, which in so many ways is our fight as well.
Senator Chris Coons of Delaware, thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining me.
Thank you, Dan.